Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. Here's our agenda for today. First of all, we're going to have our welcome and general business and then some member announcements. That'll take up about the first 15 minutes. After that, we're going to hear from our meeting sponsor, Tipalti. And then our main presentation, our accounting spotlight presented by Dana Larson. And then we'll have some tips and tricks after Dana's presentation. And then with the remaining time until noon, we will have our open forum. Membership to the user group is free. You can register at RMNSUG.org. Once you register for membership, that ensures that you get notifications of upcoming meetings and events that we have. You also get access to our LinkedIn forum. And if you're not a member, please sign up today. Where you can find us, we do have a website. It's rmnsug.org. I'll show you a screenshot of that here in just a moment. We also post all of our meeting recordings to YouTube, and you can just go to YouTube and search rmnsug.org and see all of our meetings there. You can also sign up for notifications there if you'd like, but we do post the meetings on our website, the video recordings, and then also usually the slides from our meetings as well. We have a LinkedIn forum. Our LinkedIn forum is linkedin.com/groups/5099096. You can also just go to LinkedIn and search for Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group, and you'll find the group there. All of our previous meeting recordings are at rmnsug.org/posts. You can also search, and let me grab my little laser pointer here. So you can, in this search box here, you can search for different NetSuite topics such as save searches or accounting or workflows, and you'll be able to find the different meetings that we've done throughout the years by using that search box. We do have a happy hour coming up. Very excited for this. This will be our third happy hour, I believe. So save the date. It's going to be at the Lazy Dog restaurant in Highlands Ranch. It'll be a bit of an outside space this time. I think it's covered in case it rains, but it's outside. So we're excited to host the event there. It's going to be Thursday, August 17th from 5 to 8 p.m. And we do provide drink tickets for free adult beverages. We'll have hors d'oeuvres and appetizers for food. And Lazy Dog's food is really great. So if you haven't been there, I definitely recommend that. And then the reason we're doing this is for networking. So we don't do our meetings in person anymore. And so we definitely are missing that networking component of the user group. So if you have a chance, please come to this event. We'll be sending out an email with details, I think today, and well, not all the details today. We're going to announce it today. And then we'll have an RSVP email coming up in the next week or so. And so we do need RSVPs for that so we can get a head count to know how many people to expect for our event. But it's free for members. So all you need to do is RSVP and show up and come meet me and the board, the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user board, and then other members of the group as well. And this is in the Denver metro area. I know we have folks on this meeting from all over the country and probably from other countries as well, but we are just local here in Denver, Colorado. So I'm going to take just a moment for member announcements. And so if you have an announcement such as a job opening, or if you are looking for a job, or any NetSuite related announcement with your company, please feel free to unmute yourself for that announcement. You can also post it in the chat window. And then we do have our LinkedIn forum where you can post those announcements on the LinkedIn forum. So I'm going to pause just a moment. If anybody has any announcements, please feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and make that announcement. Anybody?
I'll just add as people are thinking of announcements, just add that to be a member, one of the things we need you to do, this also applies to the LinkedIn forum, is go to our membership page on the front page. We actually track our members in NetSuite, believe it or not. So if you are not in our NetSuite system as a member, then you will not be added to LinkedIn. It would be hard to RSVP there too.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, last chance. Any announcements? If you think about it later, you can post something in the chat window, and you can always post it on the LinkedIn forum as well. All right, well, we'll go ahead and move on. Everybody's being shy this morning, which is fine. All right. So just take a minute to introduce the board of directors for the user group. So that's me in the upper left-hand corner. I'm Corey Anderson. I'm an independent NetSuite and Sligo consultant, the president of the user group. Then we have our sponsorship and member chair, Margie Cominos, of the PlantScan Corporation. And she is not with us today here, but she works tirelessly behind the background with all of our sponsorships. Then we have our communications chair, Mike Cackline of Vertifor, who you just heard from a moment ago. Thanks for all you do, Mike. And then our speaker chair, Peggy Eveleth, helps coordinate our meetings and our content and everything happening there. And I don't know if Peggy has made it on yet. It doesn't look like she's made it on yet this morning. And then we have, I'm sorry, Peggy is with RSMUS. And then we have Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting, an independent NetSuite consultant. And Dana is our star speaker today. And so you'll be hearing from her a lot. So thank you, everybody on the board, for everything that you do to help keep this user group running. Evaluations. So we do send out an evaluation survey. It'll be sent out today. Please take a few moments to fill it out and let us know how we're doing. We read and act on that feedback to help make the user group meetings better. One of the most important areas of those evaluations is meeting topics. If you have any ideas for meeting topics, please put them in there, or anything that you specifically want to hear about. We do have a pretty common rotating schedule where we do the most common NetSuite topics, such as inventory management, accounting, workflows, suite analytics, like save searches and reports and stuff like that. We do it on a rotating basis, but we're always looking for some new ideas to fill in the gaps from those rotating topics. So please take a minute to fill out those evaluations when they're sent out to you. And as Mike just mentioned, we do use a production NetSuite account to manage the user group. And so please use the same email to RSVP as the email that you received the meeting invite. We do try to maintain individual member records. If you received an invite to the meeting with different email addresses, maybe like a personal email and then a work email, and you want to we'd like to maintain just one record for you. You can email rsvp@rmnsug.org to have the extra email addresses inactivated. And then you can provide the correct company name, which email should be inactivated if there's a group of emails that need to be inactivated. So anyway, please help us maintain individual records. Our meeting sponsorship. So membership to the user group is free, as I mentioned, but there is a cost to running the user group. So the cost of our meetings is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. We have Suite App sponsors and consulting sponsors. Suite App sponsors must be available through suiteapp.com, and consulting sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have certified NetSuite consultants on staff. If you or your company is interested in sponsoring, you can learn more and sign up for either sponsorship type at rmnsug.org/sponsorship. Our upcoming meetings, we have a pretty good plan moving for probably the next year or so, but these are the next 3 upcoming meetings. So September this year will be an inventory focused meeting. The topics are going to be supply planning, supply allocation, and item 360. And we're going to have NetSuite, some NetSuite employees, Gary DeWill, and maybe another person to help present that meeting. Gary did our projects meeting earlier this year, and it was fantastic. So we're super excited to have Gary as part of our user group and helping out when he can. So that's our inventory meeting. November, we're going to have our cash 360 plus other cash related topics. This is we've done this type of topic before, and it's a little bit of a potpourri of topics, but they're all going to be kind of related to this concept of cash in NetSuite. And then in January, every January, we do Suite Analytics. And so Suite Analytics encompasses, it could be native reporting, the reporting module, could be financial reporting, could be saved searches, could be Suite Analytics workbooks. And so we're not sure exactly which of those parts of Suite Analytics we're going to do in January yet, but we do Suite Analytics every January. So that's coming up first thing next year. So I'd like to take a minute to thank our consulting sponsor today, Bridgepoint Consulting. So thank you for sponsoring. This is about Bridgepoint. So I'll tell you a little bit about Bridgepoint. Bridgepoint Consulting is a leading enterprise solution delivery firm providing cloud solutions that enable organizations to elevate, transform, and grow their business. They offer expert NetSuite guidance throughout all stages of an implementation, including solution design, configuration, customization, optimization, and ongoing support. They also offer additional services within their financial consulting and risk and compliance practices, as noted here. So thanks again for Bridgepoint for sponsoring our user group. We're happy to have you here and part of the user group. And then we'd also like to thank our Suite App sponsor today. Our Suite App sponsor is Tipalti. So I ran a little bit short or a little bit fast, I guess. So we're going to take a few minutes. We're going to hear from Jessica Brown. And so Jessica, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and turn the presentation over to you for 10 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Corey. Good morning, everyone. Give me just a second to get my screen share going here. Okay, so I want to thank everyone for joining this morning and thank the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group for having us. We're very excited to spend a little bit of time talking with you this morning about AP. But before we get started, I want to start with something a little fun. So you will see a QR code on your screen. And we are doing a drawing today for a $300 Patagonia gift card. So if you have your phone available, go ahead and scan that QR code and fill out our registration. I will show this again at the end of our presentation today. So if you don't have your phone, run and grab it quick, and then I will have this up again at the end of my presentation. But excited to give away some Patagonia gift cards. So jumping into Tipalti, Tipalti is a holistic AP solution really focused for our NetSuite customers to have a better way to manage all of your payables. So we're going to start, if you're looking at this slide, basically we're going to go in kind of a clock fashion. So we're going to start with our supplier management. So when you really think about your AP, everything starts with that vendor onboarding. We give our customers a white labeled onboarding, self-onboarding for their vendors to go in, key in their own address information, key in how they want to get paid, and then also collect all of their tax information. So we do work with KPMG to ensure that we're collecting tax information for your vendors in over 50 different countries. So this is really going to ensure that you're not spending that time in October, November, December, chasing down those W-8s and W-9s so that you can have your 1099 records ready come the end of the year. So really just giving you a very streamlined way to manage all of your vendors. So also taking away from those kind of daily questions that your AP team members get on, did you get my invoice? I need to change my address. I need to change my bank account. They can actually manage and see all of that information in the vendor portal themselves. So really trying to take away some of that time spent that is really unnecessary for your AP team members. So then once a vendor is onboarded, really comes down to making that purchase. So If your organization is already using POs inside of NetSuite, that is absolutely fine. If you're looking to implement a PO process and maybe don't want to utilize NetSuite for that, or don't want to have all of your users in NetSuite, we give you an option. We have a module for purchase orders that's a very simple form fill to go into and create a purchase requisition. So all of the fields can be customized to what you want to see in your PO inside of NetSuite. But once they complete that purchase requisition, it goes through approvals, and then it actually creates that PO inside of NetSuite for you. So once that purchase has been made and the invoice is received, Tipalti sits on top of your AP email inbox and ingests all of those invoices for you via OCR, optical character recognition technology, and brings all that information into NetSuite. The second layer that we have that sits on top of that, that is unique to Tipalti, is that we do have a managed services layer that sits on top as well. This is a team of individuals at Tipalti that actually reviews all of those invoices, ensures that everything came over accurately, and fills in any missing information. So this is really taking OCR technology from about 60 to 70% accuracy to a 99% accuracy. This is saving your AP team time from going in and fixing all of those on their own, or even keying in all of the information manually. So then once the invoice is ingested, then we can go through multiple different layers of approvals. If it's a non-PO backed invoice, then you would be able to set all of your approvals based on department, class, dollar amount, however you want to set up your approvals, and it would kick off that approval chain. If it's a PO matched invoice, then we do pull those in POs from NetSuite. We do both 2- and 3-way PO matching. The only thing that your AP team member is going to need is look at the discrepancies that may have come across between the PO and the invoice. And then from that point, once everything's approved, we would go into the payment side of the business. We do have Tipalti virtual cards now available. So if you're not already utilizing a card system, a great option for you to have a virtual card to pay your payables. There is great cash back available on this. This is great for your subscription billing and some of the more regular payments that you make, where you can track them and get some great cash back options on those. For all of your vendors, we do have global remittance, and we are a licensed money transmitter. So we are able to move money into 196 countries in 120 different currencies across 6 different payment methods. So this is really ensuring that you're able to pay not only your vendors domestically, but across the globe. And we do pay into the majority of the countries that our customers work with, as long as they're not working in any of those kind of hot zones, then we are typically able to make those payments for them. And for our global customers, we do also offer FX solutions, which is foreign exchange. So if you are paying into other countries and need to move money in other currencies, we have great options available to make this a very streamlined and easy process for you. We're getting you some of the best rates available in the marketplace. After the payment is made, we do reconcile everything back into NetSuite. One of the key features of Tipalti is that we are an API integration with NetSuite. So it is a real-time connection with NetSuite, ensuring that everything that's happening in Tipalti is also reflecting inside of NetSuite. So your AP team can be working in all of the AP functions that go on inside of Tipalti, and the finance team can be pulling real-time reports as far as cash requirements and things of that nature on the NetSuite side. Our goal is to keep NetSuite your one true source of information. So everything we do in Tipalti also reflects in NetSuite. We do put copies of the invoices in there and all of the approval chains, and any messages that may occur around those approvals are going to sit inside of NetSuite as well. So really streamlining that process and ensuring that you have everything in both places while keeping your AP team very lean and mean. We've also just added Tipalti expenses. So we do have an expense module available that is going to be a mobile app for your employees to submit their expenses. We use this internally. It's actually a very easy to use system. I just submitted my first couple of expense reports and was surprised at how fast and easy it was. But very, very new system available with the mobile app ability to submit the expenses and then the payments being made through Tipalti. So Tipalti is really becoming your one place to manage all of your spend management. And coming very soon here in the future, we do have the travel and expense cards that are coming, which will be the physical Tipalti cards. So those are coming by the end of the year this year. So just adding into our portfolio of items. But when you look at Tipalti, we are one holistic system to really bring together everything related to your spend management that you might have been using up to 4 systems, maybe more, to manage all of these from your AP side, your expense management, your cards platform, and your bank. So really want to continue to enhance our offering. We are always continuing to build out new products, new reports, new feature sets to give our customers the absolute best in what they need to manage everything related to their spend. Are there any questions I can answer for anyone in relation to Tipalti? Just check in the chat here. Okay, as promised, I put up the QR code again for you to review. So it does look like we have some questions coming in.
So if you want to answer those quickly, that's fine, Jessica, but we can also just answer them through the chat.
Okay,
if you want.
perfect. I can do either. I'm not sure how we're doing on time. I felt like I went very fast.
Yeah, we probably have about a minute here.
Okay, perfect. So there is one quick question that I will answer. The payment management, does this support EFT and ACH? It does support both EFT, ACH, as well as checks. We do e-checks in other countries. We also have PayPal available. So there's a lot of different payment options that are available. You can actually select which payment offerings you want available for your vendors. And there's quite a few more questions coming in, so I will answer all of these in the chat for you and turn it back over to the team.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you to Tipalti for sponsoring our meeting. I'd also like to mention that Bridgepoint Consulting has a raffle as well. I put the link to that raffle in the chat window. You can enter that up until the end of the meeting today. It's for an Amazon gift card. So please make sure you go and enter the raffle for Bridgepoint Consulting, and then the link for the Tipalti raffle is also in the chat window. We'll post those again a little bit later on in the presentation. At this point, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Dana Larson. If you're ready, Dana, we'll let you take it away.
Okay, let me share my screen. See that okay, and you hear me okay?
Looks great, and we can hear you great.
Great. All right. Good morning, everyone. Dana Larson with Dana Larson Consulting. I've been working with NetSuite since 2007 when I bought it as a client, and have just had lots of fun with that since then. I was thinking about it yesterday that I learned something new every day, and preparing for this, I learned some new things. And then I thought, well, you can decide if that just means I'm slow or if NetSuite is just that vast. So I did post at the very top of the chat. You will find a link to the PowerPoint presentation for today, the slides. I only did that because I'm going to pop back and forth between the slides and NetSuite, and want to make sure that maybe it's helpful for you to have that in front of you. So that's all at the very top of the chat. There's a link. or it's out on the RMNSUG.org website. Corey posted it there yesterday. So, all right, so here's the agenda for today. We're covering a lot. I put this here mostly so that when you're looking later, you know how far to jump ahead in the recording or in the slides, because there's so much. You can then jump around and figure out what you're interested in. Mostly what I chose for today's meeting, and we talked about it as a board, was topics that were related to the audit. People come to you and ask questions. They want information that you have to go then dig in NetSuite for. It's topics like that that will hopefully make your life easier from an accounting standpoint to get to things faster. And most of these come from my clients where they've asked me for these things because their auditors are asking them. And we will, oops, I had a slide on, there it is, questions during the presentation. Corey mentioned that we do read the evaluations, and when I did a presentation a year ago, I got very distracted by the questions. And so we do read your evaluations, and so we're trying to change that up a little bit. So if you have any, enter them in the chat window. The board members can monitor that and answer. Also, you can answer if you know the answer. It takes a village. We all have our experience with NetSuite. We're just here to share our experience, but we're not the only experts on the call. And then I'll try to pause a couple times and address any questions that the board sets aside from the chat. And then at the end, we're going to open it up to questions. And so that at that time, you can unmute and we can chat and talk about a question. So I just want you to know how that's going to work today. I'm going to try to keep my eyes off the chat so that I don't get distracted. All right. So starting right off the bat, we're going to look at some the chart of accounts. And I realize I have a typo right off, chart of accounts, not chart of account tips. So the bank and credit card accounts can only apply to one subsidiary, obviously, because you have to reconcile and have a balanced balance sheet. Once you set up an account with an account type, you can't change it. So you can't say, well, this was expense and now I'm going to make it other expense, or you can't make something current liability to long-term. If you do need to change it, you can create a new account, make the old one inactive, and do monthly journals historically to move the balances to the new account, or use the custom layout in the financial statements to move the historical account to a different section. So if you need to keep the account exactly where it is, but you just want to report on it differently, you can do the layout, the custom layout. And we have a whole segment in our recordings on custom layouts. So if you want to learn how to do those, that changes the rows of your reports. And it's especially helpful for things like the cash flow report, where you have very specific items you want on lines. You can define the lines of your report. Most accounts can be merged if they're the same type of account. Bank accounts that are merged will unreconcile everything. So be careful with that. If you do merge, it can't be undone. So never say, let's test a merge and see what it looks like, because it's not something you can undo. The merge is in the drop down in the actions. I said that wrong too, another typo. So in the actions of the, when you're editing an account, in the actions drop down, there's a merge button and you tell it where you want it to go. One idea too is if you don't want to merge, you can make one account a sub account of another, and then make the sub account inactive. And what's nice with that, this would be, of course, if they're of the same type, but what's nice with that is you can keep the old account. Historically, it'll roll up into the new account, but you don't have to merge. So you still have that historical where it was. All right, so there's your chart of accounts tips. Next, we're going to talk about account registers, and I'm going to go into NetSuite now. So the slides are available. As I said, at the top of the chat window, you'll see a link to the slides. So if you want to follow along the slides, but I kind of prefer to work in NetSuite to show you. So can everybody see NetSuite okay? I'll assume yes.
Yep, looks good.
Otherwise, okay. So account registers are interesting because they are different. Like you can go look at what's in an account by going to, say, an income statement and drilling in, but this is another way to find information. So for example, you could go to your AP register and you could say, I want to see what's hit that account. And you can get pretty granular in your search. So you click on the name, not edit or view. So I was in the list view of the chart of accounts, and now I came out here and I'm looking at my register. And there's a couple tricks here. You can click on one line if you only want to see one line per transaction. So you don't see what the other side hit, and it so it tightens up the view for you. You can also change your dates to be exactly what you're looking for. So this is really helpful if you're, and we'll talk about it later, but if you're viewing your financial reports by period and someone says, yeah, this happened on the 7th, but you go in to drill in and you've got thousands of transactions. If you go to the register, then you can actually identify exactly the day you're looking for and find the transaction. You can sort it various ways by the amounts, document number, order that it was entered. So this is pretty powerful. You can say, I only want to see open ones. So if you're looking at a bank account, if you want to look at something that hasn't been reconciled, you can actually, it'll say cleared if you're at a bank account, but you can limit your view that way as well. You can limit your subsidiary context. So you can say, I only want to see this one subsidiary. And then this find is really helpful down here because you can search for a dollar amount and then find everywhere that you see that. Now, I will say you have to put in the comma. So do you see how we have this 30,212 here? If I do 3212, it's not going to find it. But if I do 30,212, and this one is a little bit more, I'd say, reliable than using the browser one. If you use the Control F browser one, you still have to do the comma. Sometimes that one won't look all the way down to the bottom. I have found in my experience, and I don't have the exact statistics on when it works and when it doesn't, but it's like it only looks so far down. And then when you're doing this, just notice these little pink lines over here. This is showing you where it found it. So you can see that it's not finding it down there, but you can also, of course, click through them. There we go. What else on that one? Oh, if you're looking at a bank account, excuse me, I'm going to go back to my accounts. And if you're looking at a bank account, it will show you, I'm going to look at this one. It will show you if it's been reconciled. This can be super helpful if you know, if you're trying to do a bank rec and you know there's a transaction out there that should be part of your current bank rec and it's not there. That means it's already been reconciled. And you say, well, how do I know when that was reconciled? I want to figure that out. You can go in here and find it, and it'll say, do you see this one right here was reconciled on the 11/18/2021 reconciliation. Now this is test data, so it's kind of funny because I don't know, I don't usually do recs on the 18th, but I suppose the bank statement could be through the 18th. So, but this will tell you, yes, this one was reconciled on that date. So then you would know which reconciliation to go, unreconcile that one, find what should have been reconciled. You can also see that you could go to reconcile it right now if it has not been. So do you see how now we have the uncleared versus the open? You can now say, I only want to see my uncleared. And if you click on the reconcile button, it's going to take you to the reconcile account statement, which is, I was thinking it was going to take us to the deprecated, but it did take us to the new reconcile account statement. And in a minute, we're going to get to bank recs. So we'll talk about that more then. All right. Any burning questions, guys, in the chat?
Dana, there's one in the chat. It's a little stumper for me. The chart of accounts view, the screen, is there a way to customize the columns viewed in there?
No, it's kind of a weird, it's a weird screen if you ask me, because it's one of the few places that you can't. You can do a save search across the chart of accounts. And when you do that, you get more options because then you can see all of the fields that are on the chart. So all of the fields on each account. So I typically will just create a save search and pull in the fields that I want and go there instead of here. It's, I believe, what I don't know when you do that, now that I think about it, is if you click on the account name, will it take you to the register or not? I'm not sure. So we'd have to test that. You can also, one thing I didn't mention is you can add custom fields to your chart, to your account record. And this is super helpful. Just as an example, you could say who reconciles this account, and you could have a custom field that's a drop down of your employees. And so you could assign your accounts for reconciliation. There's other products out there that help with, month end and reconciliation. But if you're just wanting to note something about the account, you can add custom fields of any type to your chart. They still won't show on this view, but if you go into a save search view, they'll be there. I don't think, Suzanne, to answer your question, I don't think there is a way to do that. Again, save searches are powerful. If you'd prefer, you can go at it through a save search and then pull the AP account on the expense line. I'm trying to see.
Yeah, or Wendy had the suggestion of using analytics. That way you can do multi-level joins down.
Yeah.
The overall theme's the same, is that the view, the form in this page called chart of accounts is not, you just can't change it. So you
It's
have to
not
go
customizable. Yeah. Okay. And we have other presentations saved in the user group that talk more about, I meant to click on the view, 1 second, on the view for the account, just to point out just a couple small things that might be helpful. So when you're setting up your chart of accounts, there's some rate types. These are for currency exchange types for historical when you're running reports. You can over here, oh, this is a bad example. This is I'm going to go to an expense account instead. So it depends on where you are in your chart to what you will see available. We'll go to a COGS and edit that. This is where you can set things like the 1099 category. This is native NetSuite. This comes along with your fixed assets management. If you buy that, you can tell it which subsidiaries. I highly recommend, if it's a general account, to put it at the top level sub and say include children, because otherwise, if you cherry pick and say, I want this in Canada and Germany, you can do that. But if you add a subsidiary later, it's not going to be available. That account won't be available. The only way you can add subs later and have it available without thinking about it would be to put it at a header level and make it include the children. It is helpful for things like if you do have accounts that you know specifically should only be in one subsidiary, so that can be really helpful. If you mark it as a summary account, it makes it inactive according to NetSuite, as far as if you're out in a transaction and you do the drop down, it's not going to let you select the account because it's a summary account, and so it blocks you from posting to a summary account, which can be very useful if you have new users and you don't want them to post to a summary account, you know how you're typing in the account name, you can easily stop at the summary and not keep going. And so this would stop that problem, which is kind of nice. So we'll talk later about this deferral account. This has to do with amortization schedules. And so when I bring that up later, this is the field I'm talking about. You can set at an account level what its deferral account would be for prepaids. So let's say I'm in the rent account down here, my deferral account might be prepaid rent. And so that's where you set that up. All right, we're going to move on to journal entries. There are two types of journal entries in NetSuite. If you have OneWorld, there's the standard journal that's for one subsidiary, and then there's the intercompany journal that's for multiple subsidiaries in one journal. Journals can go through an approval process. So if you've ever wondered about that, you can flip on the approvals. We're not going to go through that today, but we might do a whole session sometime just on approvals. Note that if they are in a pending state for approval, they won't post to the GL until they've been approved. And so you'll see the journal out there, but if you run a financial report, they will not show until they've been approved. If you want to copy a journal, after you've saved it, it's in this drop down. And when you save it, I could probably pull up a journal. I like that recent records, by the way. I use that all the time to see what I've been in. So you can make a copy. And when you make a copy, it's going to copy most everything, but it's going to take today's date. So make sure that, oops, it doesn't work on the right click. So we're just going to do make copy. Make sure that you update the date, but otherwise it'll stay. And we'll talk about memorized transactions in a minute because that's the other way to do this. But if this is just a one-time copy, I want to copy this, then you just come in, update the date and save it. Now, one thing to note, if there are files attached, it copies them. So if you've got under your communication, let's say you had backup for this, which I highly recommend. Let's say you had a file attached that was your backup for this. Sometimes this is a good thing because it's the same backup that you want attached for each of your journals. That makes sense. But if you're copying a journal or any type of transaction, and let's say it's a bill, you go to last month's bill and you copy it and you attached the PDF of the bill. Now you're going to have the old one attached. So just be aware of copying. You can memorize journals. So if I click on memorize, actually I'm going to go back to the one. Actually, we're going to talk about memorized transaction in a minute, but it's right here under the, you have to be in edit mode to memorize it. And this could be where you just set it up to go. And we'll talk about that in a minute. You can import journals. When you do, you just want to make sure that you have an external ID column so that you could import thousands of journals in one entry as long as you have one column that tells NetSuite when you're starting a new journal entry. So that column is really important on the mapping, but then you can import up to 25,000 lines on a CSV. So if you, for example, have to rekey your payroll, you use something else for payroll, and every month you go in and rekey that, why don't you turn that into a template, and then you can update your dollars in Excel or in whatever, in the file that you export, and then you import that instead of hand keying in a journal. So always think about ways to save keystrokes, right? Save time. There's also statistical journals. So in NetSuite, you can have accounts that are statistical. So if you run an income statement, statistical accounts won't show there, but it might be head count per department or something like that. So you can make journal entries that affect statistical accounts. So let's say at the end of the month, you said, I had 2 people leave this department and 2 people join this department, you can make a journal entry to your statistical account to add that head count. Just throwing that out there as an idea. Think about ways that statistics might help you for your business. And then you can pull those into reporting, and you can also, if you have the advanced financials, you can do allocations based on those statistical values. Advanced intercompany journal entries are exactly like journals, except in a saved search, just so you know, there's a checkbox that says I'm an advanced intercompany. So if you're trying to do a saved search only over just intercompanies, then you check that little box to say yes. It has a completely different menu option when you're going to it, but in NetSuite, it's the same journal file record. So in here, notice that you have a subsidiary up here and you have one down here. This subsidiary, frankly, doesn't do anything, because down here, you're going to enter your subsidiary. However, if you're importing them, remember that you want your lines to the first subsidiary that you list up here. See how it's required? In this account, we have a 2 subsidiary, but that's not always the case. So this first line subsidiary has to match that one. So if you're trying to do an import of advanced intercompanies, just make sure that this subsidiary is mapped to the first line subsidiary. And then the journal entry, your advanced intercompany journal entry, has to tie out for every subsidiary. Debits and credits have to tie, but you can then have multiple subsidiaries. And each subsidiary doesn't have to be affected by the same dollar amount. You could have, you know, $1,000 entry going into one and $100 into another. But when you save it, it'll warn you and it'll tell you that, hey, this isn't balanced between the subsidiaries. And you can say, okay, I knew that and I don't care, and you can save it. But it's kind of nice that it gives you the warning. So best practice for both types of journals is to add your, like we talked about on that journal we were looking at, to add the under the files, to add the backup. And you can use, we don't have drag and drop turned on, but there's a free bundle that you can add where you can just drag the file and drop it into a little box right here, and it'll attach it down here, or you attach your file. But you'd be surprised. I don't know if you're like me, I think, oh yeah, I'll remember exactly what I was doing when I did that. And then a year later, I have no memory of making that journal entry. And so it's always good to back that up. And auditors love that. Let's see. Oh, and don't use a journal if you can use a standard transaction. It's so much better for the audit if you've got bills when it's a bill, invoices when it's an invoice. Only use journals for special things. And then you can use the user notes area for non-attachments, but you can just type a note about this if you want to remind yourself later and not have an attachment. Just say new note and type something like, Bob asked me to make this because of XYZ, and this is why we did this. So you know, make good use of that if you can. All right, any questions on journals?
I think one for Dana, which I found interesting, the difference between a intercompany journal versus a advanced intercompany journal.
It's just called intercompany, but it is an advanced. I don't know why it's called that here, actually. Oh, you know what? I lied. I bet it's because this one is only one to the other. This is a demo account and I've not seen this, so it might be a feature that's enabled where it's only one to the other intercompany. And advanced intercompany, you can do as many subs as you want, and it doesn't have a 2 subsidiary on it. I bet you that's what this is. So I'm not sure. You're right. I've never seen intercompany journal. I've always seen advanced. Oh, this is deprecated. Oh yeah, so this must be what it used to be called. This is an old demo account. See how it says advanced intercompany are replacing the intercompany. So go to that page. So there you go. Good question. All right, moving right along. We have memorized transactions. You can memorize most transactions, and when you do, there's 3 types. There's 3 ways to memorize it. It can be an automatic, a reminder, or a template. And it's really important to pick the right one. So automatic means it's going to post no matter what. So if I save a journal entry and say automatic, then it'll post it month after month. A reminder is going to come up on my dashboard and tell me, hey, you have this entry that needs to be put in. So let's say you've got bills, but you have to change them, like a mortgage payment or something where the interest is different every month, but you want a reminder to put that in. Maybe it's even auto pay, but you want to go ahead and update the transaction. That would be a very good one for a reminder. And then the templates are ones where it's an entry that you occasionally make. And let's say it's a long, complicated journal entry, and you just want to pull that template up when you need it. So it's almost more like a template that you can pull as needed. That's what that is. So to get to them, you'll go to transactions, management, enter memorize transactions list. And I'll show you actually, I'll show you what's here and then also how to make them. So when you're looking at this list, you can filter on the action, which is super helpful to say, hey, I want to see mine that are automatic. What's going to go out automatically. So this is a bill that's going to go every month. And you can see that its next date is 8/1. And if I wanted to enter that right now, I can click on enter and it will go make the entry for me. This is not me looking at the memorized transaction. This is me entering it for 8/1. So just be careful with this. So now it's going to put it out here. It's going to put today's date because I hit this, but I could change this to 8/1. And then I can say save because I've entered this in the past and I'm ready to go. And now if you looked at the memorized transactions again, it would say the next one is on 9/1 because we just entered the one for 8/1. And it's slow. All right, and then I'm just going to show you here what it looks like to create one. If you're in edit mode, under the actions drop down, you can say memorize. And put a good name on it because sometimes it'll just say journal. It'll automatically fill that in. But give it a good name so that if you find it, if you need to find it later, you can easily find it, because often you have to stop those memorized transactions at some point. So you want to go find them. And this one was it's saying template only, but see, I can say automatic or reminder. And then if it's an automatic, it'll tell you when's my next date, repeat every 1 month, start or end of the period. You know, you've got some choices there. And then the number remaining. And then you could say indefinite if you just want to keep this going for a long time. Excuse me. And then once you save it, it's out there. Now, I highly recommend, or if you're doing reminder ones, then you have to go to your dashboard and you need to set up the reminder to tell you that the memorized transactions are due. To do that, you go here and you click on setup if you don't already have it. And then you'll see on the left side, all of the reminders that are available. And we're going to talk about reminders more later, but this one in particular, we need to make sure that we have this memorized transactions due. You can see it doesn't have a C in front of it. That means it's NetSuite native. And so if you just click on that, then you can come in here and as part of your daily to-do, you'll see, oh, I've got a transaction due. And then you can click on it. It'll take you to the transaction. You can update it, save it, and then it'll pop up the next time. So we'll talk more about this dashboard reminder in a minute. Let's see, what did I think that's all I had on memorize. So I can pause for a minute. Any burning questions I should address? All right, we'll keep going because I'm already feeling like I'm a little bit behind. Not too bad. Okay, so we have amortizations. This is a wonderful way to manage your prepaids. And we did a whole session on this, or a section of one earlier. So if I don't get into it enough today, you could look that up on the user group site. But a couple notes on amortizations. So the idea here is that you enter a bill in its simplest form. They can be used for different things, but let's say I enter a bill that's an annual license and I want to book it to prepaids and then have it pay out for the next 12 months, amortize from that prepaid and then hit the expense account. So that's what we're talking about here. You need to turn on the future periods. So if I'm going to amortize something for 36 months, I have to have 36 months open into the future in order for it to save. So if you're ever working on this and you get an error about that, you'll have to talk with someone who can open up future periods to make that available. They don't actually have to be unlocked. They just have to be out there. And it's a feature that you have to enable. So you enable it in the setup company enable features accounting. Okay, so this is where you have to tell it where you want the expense to go. Now, remember when we were looking at that expense account in the chart of accounts, I'll go back there. Take a sip of water. I'm going to look for rent. Okay. Oh, that's not a good one. I'll go down to the 6s. Let's see if we have a rent expense or something like that. Like something that you would pay for in advance. Let's say advertising. So if you're editing this advertising, this would be if you have a whole bunch of prepaid accounts and you say, where do you want this to defer if it's a prepaid? So then you can pick your prepaid accounts. Right now we have insurance and supplies. And so we really only have 2 right now. But let's say you had a bunch and you wanted to have one template that was a straight line 12-month amortization. You can do it in every account. But if this seems daunting, which I think it is, because then every time you add an account, especially if it's of that expense type, you have to remember to do the deferral. The shortcut then is to instead, excuse me, go into your amortization templates, list accounting amortization templates, and I'll show you what we have so far. We only have 2. So one of them, I'm going to look at this prepaid insurance. The reason it's named prepaid insurance is because I was actually able to tell it which account to use for my deferral. I hard coded it right here. If I didn't hard code this deferral account, it would look at the specific account I'm hitting with the expense and it would say, where do you want me to defer to? But if I override it here, then I don't have to set it up over on the account. So in this particular case, I might have 2 straight line amortization templates, one for each of the prepaid accounts. And then that's all I have to do to set it up so that when I'm entering the bill, I pick which account I want that to go to. Is it insurance or is it supplies? Notice that I didn't put an amortization period, contra, or target. This is all empty because I'm going to set that up on my bill itself. So I don't need to fill in any of this. So all I have to do, and like I said, if you had the deferral account set up on the account, you don't even have to do that one. But just while we're here, note that you can have a variable, so you can set it up manually, or a standard. So you could set it up to prorate the first and last period, prorate based on exact days. You can have a residual amount, so you can get pretty fancy with these. But again, if I don't put a amortization period in here, then it's going to be based on how I enter the bill. So let's go look at a bill. I think I did one. I'll look at this bill. One of these bills I added, or I'll just add a new one. Yeah, I'm going to, okay, this is the one I did. So let's edit it just so I can show you what it looks like. So when you're putting in a bill that you want to amortize, you will want to hit the, in this case, it was an item. Oh, I forgot, this was my item one. I'm going to go back and show you that. Because items you can actually depreciate. So this would be if you don't have the fixed assets module. And this is in the slide deck, so you can see it. But do you see this depreciation capital equipment 36 months? This one is very specific. And in this one, we say, where do we want the deferral account to go? Where do we want the contra and the target? How many months? And you can even put like a residual to say there's going to be, $200 left over on that in the end. And so this one is, you can only use these types with items. Okay, so if I'm on a bill and I'm going to add it as an expense, I'll show you. Let's say we're adding an account. I'm going to add a supplies expense. Actually, yeah, that's $200 that has a separate amortization schedule. I can come here. Now notice I hit the expense account I want it to go to, and then I pick my schedule, which makes no sense that it's going to go to insurance, but bear with me. And then I'll say, I want this to start on 8/1. And I want it to go just through the end of the year. Okay. Keep in mind that if I said 1/1/23 here, it's going to be 5 months because it's going to do 8, 9, 10. It's going to be 6 months, excuse me, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1. It's counting the periods because this is a period straight line. So that's the most common error I see is that people do a year and they say 5/15/23 to 5/14/24. That's going to give you 13 months of amortization. So you want to pay attention to how many months you want it to go. It's just looking at the period, unless you picked one of the other ones. Now, if you're on an item line and you're picking an amortization schedule, then it's only going to show you the ones that are, see how, oh, I lied. That you would want to pick the depreciation one because it's not going to back it out of the same account. Okay, so I didn't think that prepaid one would show up on the item line, but it did. I know what it is. Let me see if the expense had both of them. Yep. Okay, so if I save this, you'll notice that it, even though we put the expense account in the expense for 6240, if I look at the GL impact, it's hitting the prepaid. Do you see that? Even though I hit the expense account. So that's how these amortization schedules work. And so the final thing on these is that you have to run them. And there's more detail in the, I have quite a few slides on it in the slide deck. Just want to make sure I'm not behind on time. A couple things. You can click on the schedule once you create it. When you're in the bill, you can go look at the schedule and you can see how it's going to amortize over time. You can also then, you'll want to run your amortization. So this is another thing that you'll need on your dashboard is a reminder to run your amortizations at the end of the month. They don't automatically go in. So make sure that you run them. And you do that under financial, create amortization journal entries. And you have to, this up here is like a filter. You pick your dates, you pick everything. I'm going to put 7/31/23. And I'm going to put US because I think that's where they are. You can only do one sub at a time. This will show you if you have any weighting. And I'd highly recommend that you include prior periods when you're looking at this, because you may have missed one last month if you didn't run it, or someone put it in at the end of the month. And then you'll see it over here. Do you see how there's a May 21 that got skipped? So you include prior periods, posting period, filter by the sub. This is going to be the journal entry date. And then now you can just create the journal entries and it'll put all of these onto one. And I also put some notes about a, there's a native report to show the amortization forecast. So if an auditor says, what are you forecasting for next year for your amortizations? You can also create a saved search to show the amortized amount and the remaining deferred balance. So if you want to prove out your balance of your prepaid account, instead of keeping a spreadsheet on the side with all of it, you can run the saved search. And I have the saved search I have the picture of it in the slide deck. But you're essentially just running a saved search over the amortization schedules. So it looks like this. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a lot to show here, but it's going to show you each bill, how much was in the schedule, the remaining deferred, and how much has been amortized. So if you total this, and I did try to add totals, and for some reason it didn't let me. I think it's because it's a grouped saved search. If you total these, they should match your prepaid account, and then you're easily, I do see that question, Janice. At the very top of the chat, I posted a link to the slide deck for today. And it will also be, it's out on the RMNSUG.org website. Okay, I'm going to keep charging because we've got a lot. All right, date versus period reporting. We talked about that briefly, but this is a big deal. It's under your set preferences in your home button. And it's right here under analytics. Financials only, all reports or never. So if you're running, most people run with financials only, that's the default. So if I'm running an income statement, then I'm going to see it by period. Okay. But if I'm running any other kind of report that's not financials, inventory or something like that, I'm going to see it by day. But you can say, I want to report by period never, so that you can isolate an income statement, for example. I'll save that. So now if I go to run an income statement, I can say, I want to see the first week or something like that. Let's see, reports, financial income statement. So now I could say 1/1/2022 to 1/15. I'm not sure if there's data, so I'll tell you right off that. But do you see how this is now dates down here instead of periods? So if you're sitting with your accounting team and someone says, well, this is what my report says, and yours says something else, be sure to check. Are you running it by date or period? Because remember that you can have date period mismatches. I can put a transaction in and date it 1/31, but it put a period of February or the other way around. And sometimes that makes sense to do. But if you're reporting differently, then you're going to need to change that. So again, it was under set preferences. The one time that I do change it, if I'm having trouble, is with my bank, because a bank reconciliation, it's all date based, not period based. And so if I go to run a balance sheet and I put in my period, the end, last day of the month, I'm doing my March bank rec, and it doesn't tie, it could be because there's some date period mismatches. So if I flip it to look at that report by day, and then I run it through March 31st, and then I look at my bank rec and it says March 31st, and my balance then will tie out. So it's very important, especially for that. AR aging, AP aging, those also use days, not periods. So keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to do bank recs and ARAP aging and then take a break. So I'll try to get through the bank recs pretty quick. We have done, again, in the past, I'm recycling some stuff that we've had for bank recs. We've done one in the past that was a longer session. So if you're really wanting to know more about bank recs, I think that might have been last year, might have been 2 years ago. Sorry, I forget. But in NetSuite, there's 2 ways to do bank recs. You can do transaction bank reconcile bank statement or reconcile account statement. These, this is the new one, reconcile account statement. Reconcile bank statement is being deprecated. So we should get this little yellow thing. So far, I've not heard them say when this is going to be taken away. And so you can still use it if you want to. It's pretty old school. What it does is it brings in, you're not matching any of your data to the bank. What you would assume is you have your bank statement in one hand, you're out here, you're just checking boxes, you're entering your statement balance, and you're getting to a no difference state. Okay, I'm sorry, I just saw Vivian. You know what, it might be that new sales, they probably don't include it anymore if you don't have the old one. And so that's a good point. If you've purchased NetSuite recently, you may not see this one, which is fine because you can accomplish the same thing in the new one that you do in this one. The only reason I like this one is this little mark all button. It's super helpful when you first go live with NetSuite and you've got thousands of transactions that you need to reconcile, and you know that you're reconciled. You just want to mark all deposits and credits, mark all checks and payments, and then uncheck a couple that might be open, put in your balance, and you're clear. So it's super helpful. It's also helpful if you mess up on the match bank data and something gets sideways, you can come back and do one reconciliation this way and then go back and start with your match bank data again the next month. I've had to do that for some folks. So one thing when you're in this screen that I think is super helpful is to hit up this history button. Unfortunately, I was looking at this test data. It's not great, but if you go here, it'll tell you the history of your reconciliations for this account. And I don't think we have any actually in this account. So I'll show you in another place. This is a really good way to see if you've had any differences in the past. Actually, I will show you the same screen from the new way. So again, in this, this is all I'll say about the reconcile bank statement. This is the old way to do it. You're putting in a statement date and a start date. Always leave the start date blank in case there's historical stuff that hasn't been cleared. You want to be sure to capture that. And then you have your deposits and credits, checks and payments. You can add new charges, new deposits, and say save, and it will reconcile. If you want to complete it later, it saves your work, and you come back in by putting in the account and the date you get there. Today, most people are using the match bank data. What that does is you import your bank transactions, and then you match them against what you have in NetSuite. And then obviously, if you're missing any, you need to add them, but your whole goal is to get rid of the bank side. So let me show you what that looks like. Once you've imported, there's under this transactions bank import upload file, this is where you upload it. You can upload different types of files. I'm not going to go too deep into that today. We don't have time, but you can also, this is where it's really nice. You can tie your bank to it so it automatically pushes the transactions in every day. So I have a client with about 5 accounts. Every night, the day's entries come across, so they can actually match and reconcile every day. They don't hit reconcile, but they match every day. So at the end of the month, it's pretty fast for them to finish their reconciliation because they've been keeping up with it every day. Again, we have a whole session on that, on how to do, how to pull those in. So in here, you will see, I think I have one of these that had some, I thought it was the bank here. Okay, so you will see to be matched. This is the bank side. So this is what the bank says happened. Over here on the right is what NetSuite says happened. So what you do is you tick and tie them across. You can set up rules to tell it, I always want to match these if they're the same date and the same amount. Actually, those rules are already set up. And so when you import it, it'll try matching for you. If you want to review what it already matched, you click on this review tab and it'll show you. It doesn't look like anything has been matched, but they'll be sitting here and you can unmatch them if they shouldn't have been matched. My only caveat here is be careful if you're matching something and you click on, let's say, this is going to be hard because I don't have anything the same amount. Actually, I'll just click on this. If I tell it that I want to add a new charge, if this make auto create rule is turned on, it's going to create charges for you automatically every month that you don't want. So be super careful with this little checkbox right here. Make sure it's not checked. If it is checked, that would be because you want it to match something forever and do that automatically. So once you get rid of everything on this side, you know that you're ready to reconcile. So you would click on this reconcile account statement. I'm just going to click over there to show you what it looks like from here. Now, once you're here, remember that reconciliation summary I showed you, the history report? You can get there from here. It's the same screen, right? It shows you everything that you've done. And so this will show you every reconciliation that you have. And then there's also a reconciliation history report. This is the one I love. It's not going to look very good in this environment. But this is the one where you can quickly see if you've ever reconciled with a difference. Because if you have, you're off forever. Like you have to fix it. So there's a difference of 332,000 in this November 18th one. If you don't want to go back and redo your November one, that's fine. But that means that your next reconciliation has to have a difference the other direction. Your differences have to net out. Otherwise, your balance sheet balance is not correct. And so this is an easy way for you to tell for all of time. Let's say you've been on NetSuite for 10 years. You can take this, export it to Excel, total your difference. I don't know why they don't give you a total, and just make sure it's 0, because that means that you're reconciled and it's really good. Yes, you can clear without matching. So this would be for the folks who don't have the, let's go back. If you don't have the deprecated version, you can just clear in here and not have anything on the bank side. Let me go back to transactions, bank, reconcile account statement. Let's say you didn't import. Maybe you have a transaction that only has 3 transactions a month in it. You can go ahead and the NetSuite side will show up over here. Oh, I'm sorry. I did that wrong. We need to go to transactions, bank, match bank data. And so this is where instead of clicking on the, see how these are over here, you could come here and just say clear, okay? And so that's saying, I want to clear this, I'm going to clear this, I'm going to clear this, and then you go to your reconcile, and then you have to enter your bank statement value. So you don't have to import your bank data over here. You can just reconcile straight from here without matching. And I know that was really quick, but I have one more thing before break, and then oh, one more on that one that's really important. How does NetSuite know which way you're doing it? There on the bank account, we'll go back to our chart of accounts. On the bank account record, if you're looking at a bank account type, and this one right here was the one that showed up in the match bank debt. It's right here. Use match bank data and reconcile account statement pages. So if this is checked, then it's only going to show up in the drop-down list for transactions, bank, match bank data. If it's not checked, it'll show up in the bank reconcile bank statement drop-down. So that's your two choices, and it's all driven by this checkbox. And you can go back and forth, but you can't have any match that haven't been submitted. So if you're in the middle of a match, you're not able to come out and uncheck this, because it'll say, wait, you've got transactions that have been matched but not submitted. Okay. And I've got more details on that in the slides. Let's see what else. Yeah, I've got quite a few, so feel free to go out and look more. Let's go to this is the last topic, and then we will take a 5-minute break. So AR and AP aging. The AR and AP accounts in NetSuite are some of the few that are actually as of reporting. So that's super helpful. Let's say I'm going to go to the receivables. So reports, customer receivables, and then AR aging. Now, let's say your auditor comes and says, show me what was open, what made up your AR balance at the end of last year. Well, right now, if you're looking at open transactions, you don't know that. But because you have an as of date down here, you could say, oh, okay, I want to recreate 12/31/22. And then under this aging options, you can tell it how you want it to age as of today. No, I'm going to age it as of 12/31/22. I want to age it based on the due date. By the way, there's a preference where you can say which one globally you want to do, but you can always change it here. And then you tell it what kind of bands you want. I want 3 bands of 30, or you can say, I want 3 bands of 1 month. You know how it'll flip between 31 and 30 days, and it looks funny when you're trying to do it month over month. So then you can say, okay, and refresh. And now you have your as of dating. And this is exactly the same for the AP side. You have aging options, and you can look backwards to say, at that time, what was open, what made up my balance. Now I'm going to point out, if you have no customer project on them, if I were you, I would review that in both the vendor and the customer aging, because that means that you have transactions in there that haven't been assigned to a customer or a vendor. Now, the only time I think that's really acceptable is if you're accruing some type of a bad debt or something, and you want to put that in there. And especially if it goes in at the end of the month and then it reverses out the beginning of the next month, that's fine, because it's not a forever transaction. But anything that sits in these accounts really has to be assigned to a name. Okay. So here you can get your the summary, and then you can also click on view detail to get to the detail. Oh, keep in mind that vendor credits and customer credit memos don't have a due date, so they don't properly show up in their in the aging column that you would expect them to. Once you apply them, obviously they will go against the proper column balance. But until then, if you've got open credit memos, it's not based on there is no due date, so it has a little harder time aging that. On this screen, remember that you can expand and collapse. So if you wanted to look in, I just clicked on this little up arrow, and now I could say, oh, I want to see what makes that one up. Oh, there's those 2 invoices. That's what's due. And so you can get more detail. And the vendor side is exactly like this. So, okay, any burning questions? I'm sorry, I feel like it's a fire hose here. I'm just, but we're going to take a break. But are there any questions right before the break? How do we do, Corey and Mike? Any?
I think we're doing okay.
We're keeping up. Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Let's come back at 10 o'clock Mountain. So 5 minutes, and we'll have some more. We're going to go over managing the periods and lock periods, and then some saved searches and reporting tricks and dashboards. So Still,
You're ready, Dana?
all right. I am going to post the,
Or anything else that's missing from the time.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. That I just posted it again in the chat in case anyone. So this is the slide deck for today. I'm going to share my screen. Let's go to. Okay, so we're going to jump in now to the accounting periods and managing accounting periods. I know some of you probably aren't in the role where you do that function, but hey, Corey, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, something changed on one of my screens. Okay, so, but it's good to know how these work. So if you go into setup, accounting, and then manage accounting periods, there's a couple tricks and tips, more or less. You can set up a full year very easily just by clicking on this button. And remember, I talked about it earlier that I'm going to do 2028. I think I have 2027 already. If you're doing an amortization schedule and you need to open up periods into the future, you can do this. And so you just put that in. You don't have to change anything. You can do a 1-day year-end adjusting period. I typically don't, just because I find it awkward when I'm doing reporting later, but it is helpful if you want to have those adjustments isolated. You can do it that way. So I'm going to save that, and then it just throws those periods out into the future. One warning, I've had it where I've forgotten to set up. I was helping a nonprofit, and I forgot to set up the new year when the new year was rolling around. So here it is, January. Everyone's entering their transactions, and it couldn't find the January period, so it actually would post back to either the first open period or the most recent period, depending on a setting. So just as a note, really pay attention to that at the end of the year to make sure that you have the new year set up. I'd always recommend having it set up into the future. Another caveat, if you've got some international additions or use VAT or GST Nexus, you'll have tax periods that are different from your accounting periods, and you have to set those up as well. This account does not have that, but you will see that there's a setup tax period. So sometimes when you're going to post something, it'll say you don't have that tax period set up. So what it is you could have a separate tax period than your fiscal period for your GST reporting. So it needs to have a separate tax period. Let's see. So once you're closing, you have to close in order. Let me go back to some that have been closed. Let's see where we are. One note is if I wanted to go back and make a change in July 2017, let's say everybody said it was okay, it's going to be a minor balance sheet change and it's not going to affect your ultimate, but you need to make this change. You can open up a period by clicking on it and then clicking on this arrow again. And when you do that, you're going to have to give a justification of why you're opening it. And then you say reopen. So I'm going to say return. And then there is an audit log of all of these close accounting periods. So if your auditors need to see when did you open and close your periods and why, there's a saved search for that. So you can get to that. So I'm going to do my reopen period. It's going to open everything after that because it has to close them in order. So if I go back to my list, you'll see that now they're all open. They should be locked though, because if they were, see how they're locked but not closed. So if you reopen historically, it's going to keep them locked. The difference between locked and closed is if you lock your period for AP, AR, and all GL, the only people who can go in and make changes in a locked period are those who have the permission set that overrides period restrictions. And so You want to give that to a limited number of people. You do your close. Let's say you lock your AP first. Those people are done. They're out of the system. Then you lock your AR. Then everybody else finishes their GL. Then you lock it and someone goes in and does one last review and then they close it. And so to close it, in this case, I'm going to close multiple periods because I want to get back. I just made that one change. I don't want to go through the checklist. So you can actually go, and I'm going to close through August 22 just randomly. And then I'm going to say submit. It's not going through all the steps, but this was super helpful when they came out with this, because when you do just make that one small change, you don't want to go into each one of them and run through the checklist, because it's tedious if you know that you don't need to check it. So it had a lot to close. I shouldn't have done so far back. But then I want to show you one thing I will say. I wrote a save search to see future transactions, because if you have future data, future periods open, then it is good to see what if someone accidentally fat fingered and put something into December instead of July. And so I get an alert when future dated transactions are entered so that I can make sure that those are appropriate. I also, it should be running, but it's not spinning. You can also set up an accounting window. I think I'm gonna cancel out of that. You can set up an accounting window to say, I only want to see 3 months open at a time, because that's super helpful for when you have people fat fingering into the future. I think I see your question, David. I think I just did a transaction search that said, show me out 3 months or something like that. I don't think I have that in my slide deck, but I'll try to get it to you. So then what it'll do is it'll lock future periods. And so it's a feature that you have to enable, or it's a preference that you enable to say, I only want 3 or 4 open at a time. So the minute you close one, it opens one for months into the future. So that can be really helpful too. Also, there's this allow non-GL changes, and I like to check that. And what that lets you do is put a memo on a transaction or add documentation. Anything that doesn't change the general ledger impact, you can make those. Notice none of these are done, and so you have to go in and check the box. Let's see, right here, allow non-GL changes, and then save it. However, you can make that a setting that automatically, so I'm just going to click on the word setup. Actually, you can search for it here, but I'm going to go to the accounting preferences is where it is. So it's the right in here, allow non-GL changes is set by default. I highly recommend that you check that box if you like to allow that. Otherwise, you have to go in every time you close a period and you have to check that box, and it's easy to forget to do it as part of the close. So I'd recommend checking that box. Now let's go back in one more time and just look at the period close checklist. See if that'll come up. So I'm going to go here. This is our first open month. Excuse me. So here, you go through each one of these tasks. So any green arrows are there. You don't have to do them in order. So everything else is dependent on a prerequisite. But now I could lock my AP. I'm going to lock it for all of my subs and say submit. So you can see that you can lock individually if you want. And then I'm going to say lock all. That'll actually do AR, AP all at the same time. And then for these other ones, I'm not going to go through each one in the interest of time, but I do want to show you let's say you don't have inventory and you see this review negative inventory every, oops, I have to go to the one above it, resolve date period mismatches. Okay, so this is the first one, and it's going to show you any mismatches you have. You click on this resolve date period mismatches, and all of them work this way. It's going to show you what it finds. It doesn't find anything. So you say back to period close, and then you say mark task complete. And so sometimes you just have to click through those buttons because it's not relevant to you, but it's still in your task list. So once you mark the task complete, it'll let you go on to the next one. And so all of these are important. If you have negative inventory, you want to know about it and make sure that it's actually meant to be there. There might be a reason for that. Same with review inventory cost accounting. You don't want to close your books until all of your inventory cost accounting is done. That would be when it revalues your inventory based on a backdated transaction, like a receipt of goods that has a higher cost. So it needs to go revalue your average cost. So anyway, each one of these, you have to go through and look at them. And then finally you get to your close, and everyone's is going to look different based on what you have in place. So the consolidated exchange rates, it comes after the foreign currency balances, because first you want to get those to the right pet. This is the consolidated exchange rates for your reporting. It doesn't. This is actually taking and booking your gains and losses based on currency. And then this is just for reporting purposes to say, when I'm consolidating my books, what exchange rates do I want to use? So they're really not tied together, even though they both have something to do with exchange rates. All right. I'm going to check my... I think we're right on time here. We're going to look at anything else on that. I guess let me ask before I move on. How are we doing?
I think we're doing good, Dana.
Okay, great. And like I said, I know not everybody uses the account close, but if you're one of those people who says, I really need to be in the books after we lock everybody else out, then you can ask for that permission. That's the override period restrictions to do that. Okay, a common question I get is the auditors come in and they want to see the general ledger or the trial balance, and they want all this information. And when you go in and you look at the reports, they don't always have what you want. And so I typically create a general ledger search. So I'm using a save search over transactions, and I'm looking at all of the transactions that hit, and then I filter on date and account. And so here's and I have this in the slide deck. I have pictures of it so that you can recreate it. But do you see how in this filter section up here, I put all of this information? And I picked, the first time I wrote this, I picked an account that doesn't have a lot of activity, so that, because if you run a general ledger that's wide open, it's going to take forever for it to load up, right? You're going to be sitting there. So what I like to do is have that on my dashboard. What I did here was I did a shortcut, add to shortcuts, and I said, I want to see this general ledger by account on my dashboard. Then it takes me right here. Then what I can do is my auditor might be saying, I want to see all of the detail in this specific account. You pick your account, you pick your dates. I also put the date it was created, so that I can isolate an activity for like a weekend or something like that, like what was created on that date. I also do the department, class, subsidiary. I try to put all the segments in there so that you can get exactly what you need. This is obviously, I'm going to do all, but then I'm going to come over here and do 131. If you type really fast, sometimes you can catch it before it does the refresh. You know how when you're in a report like save search like this, when it's at the top. So now I've got everything for that period of time. And so you definitely want to keep this, and Mike, I'm going to show the persist next. So, so this is super helpful when they want to see everything. And what I've done also is, if you put everything in it, like your departments and class, then you can go create pivot tables and do what you need, or you can do that in Suite Analytics and create exactly what you need. But I find this really helpful. So the problem with them sometimes is that there's a whole lot of information, right? This is going to take a long time. So you can go in, if I go to my Save Search list, and there's a persist button on here. And let's see, general ledger by account and date. You can, now the difference is, remember how I said I filtered it for just an account that was small so that I could not have to, when I click on it, if you click on persist, it's going to take whatever is saved. So save it first with what you want. Don't run it, just save it, and then come in here and click persist. And then it's gonna run in the background. And when you click persist, it will show you that it's running out here and it's pending. And then it'll eventually, it should be really short, right? Because I still had just the one account. Now you can download it. And so that's one way to kick off a bunch of those saved searches and then come back later and look at this and download the results. I really haven't used that one as much as I should, because it's a neat thing to be able to run it in the background. Now you'll have a status of either pending, completed, timeout, or failed. And so obviously pending, it hasn't run yet. If it's pending for 24 hours, then it's going to say that it failed. And completed is done. Timeout means it exceeded the 3-hour limit. So you would want to go ahead and adjust your save search to have less results. All right. Any questions on that and on that general ledger save search? Nothing? Okay. I have a couple others, because this is another question that I get asked a lot is, we reported our books as of November, and now it's February, and I noticed that my November no longer ties out. All right. So you want to know what's happened after a certain point in time. So you can use the system notes to do that. So in this case, I created 2 of them, what's been changed and what has been added. So let's look at the what has been added. I'm just going to show you what the search looks like. It doesn't have good information in this demo, but it's what you're trying to do is isolate transactions that happened after a certain time. And so in this case, I'm saying, I want to know for last fiscal year, the system notes type is create, and the system notes date is on or after 2/1. Let's say we closed last fiscal year on 1/31. And so I want to know what hit in there after, on or after 2/1. I always pick posting is true, so that I don't get sales orders, purchase orders, things that don't actually affect the general ledger. This is going to show me anything that posted. And in this case, I said the type is journal. You wouldn't have to do that. You could keep the type open. And then in my results, I put the date, what transaction it was, the account, department, class, sub, so I can see all the classifications, the amount, who created it, and what date was it created, because then you can go back and try to recreate and figure out, oh, do I need to just redate that to January because it shouldn't be part of our November books, or leave a November date on it, but a January posting period, so that it's not part of last year's books, but the date reflects when it actually happened. And so So I found this really helpful for helping clients figure out what changes were made and why. Then there's another one I did that's the what has been changed. It's exactly the same, except obviously the type, the system notes type. System notes types are, I'll click on the system notes are really powerful. And actually, I didn't realize that there's a setting that you can tell NetSuite to only log system notes if it's not the create. All right, so anything after create. In most of my accounts, we have it on all the time so we can see who entered the transaction. Remember, though, created by is part, not even in this, it is in the system notes, but it's also on the transaction. But we said system notes type is change on this one. So it's either create or change. And then when you're into the system notes, you can get even more information. Like in this one, I wasn't able to get, see how the created by, you can't get that off of a change because that's not going to be helpful. But if you go all the way down here to the system notes, then you can pick, oh, I know, here we go. If I say add multiple, you can pull in the context. Was it UI or was it imported, CSV? How did that change get in there? What date was it made? What field was it? New value, old value? Keep in mind, if this is a GL impact change, it's actually a link to the old value and new value. And it's not very helpful on a saved search because it's not going to show you the actual old value and new value. You're going to have to open up the transaction to see it. But you can see who did it and what role they were using when they did it. But I found these really helpful. Any questions on those? Okay.
Good, yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
So we're good. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So let's talk about some reporting tricks. We already talked about the date versus period, which is a huge one. But let's talk about alternate date range. So let's say I wanted to do an income statement and I wanted to compare it to last year. Sometimes these are already built. I'm just going to show you from a standpoint of flexibility that you can get whatever you want. Earlier, I talked about the layout changes. So for like the cash flow statement where you want to say, well, my cost of sales includes X, Y, Z. This is the layout page where you can customize the layout. And it's fairly complicated. We have done sessions on it in the past, and it's super powerful, but tedious. So keep in mind that, but you can change the left side of a report. So what I want to show you now is the alternate date type. Excuse me. So I have the amount right here. Let's say this amount is going to be tied to the report amount. I can come in here and add the amount again. And then on this one, I can say I want an alternate date range type. So I can say relative to the report date or relative to today's date. Usually you would say relative to the report date because you want it to be relative to, like, if this is a January income statement, you would want it to be relative to January, even though you're running it in February. So then you say, okay, what do you want it to be? And you can say, I want the same month last fiscal year, right? So now I've got a comparison. And so you can change the label on the headers of these, but you don't have to, because it's going to tell you what date range it's covering. So I'm going to say I wanted, oh, and another trick out here in this date field, if it says custom, that means you have to hard code it in every time. But if you change this to say, like last period, last month I've got, because I'm I'm still in the date range for my my report view instead of period. So now if I refresh that, see how it says last month? If I save this report, then every time I ran it, it would switch to last month. This would become relative. And so then you don't have to always click in and change your dates. You can just pick a date right here. And so now it's comparing 6/1. See, what I like about it is it puts the dates, so you never have to wonder, did I do my alternate date range right? Because it's going to tell you what it is. All right. So now I can add as many of those as I want. However, you are limited when you go down here, when you're looking at the alternate date. Sorry, is it still thinking? Okay. When I come down here, you only have so many date ranges you can pick. And let's say you wanted to hard code something in. When you come in here then to look at this, there is no custom date. It's all the ones that they've pre-done for you. If you want a custom date, this is just a weird trick. If you change this to relative to today's date, you can actually pick this custom and you can pick exactly what you want. And so this might be helpful if there was activity in the middle of the month, maybe you bought a company and you wanted to only see through a certain day. And then now the date period, it's not relative. It's always going to be that. So this doesn't always, it's not always helpful because you would have to hard code it in every time. But it is really helpful, especially if you're just trying to create one report and you want to show something. A few things to point out here: you can drop your decimals, divide by 1,000. Do you want to show your negatives in red? Add a grand total, add percentage of income or percentage of expense column. There's quite a few things you can do here that save you time when you're working on this. So keep those in mind. Are any questions on the column, on the alternate date range columns?
There are a few there, Dana.
Oh, okay.
You have the answers.
Can we create a balance sheet report with more than 2 years by period? I think you can. Let me go in. If you did that alternate date range and just hard coded it in, you absolutely could. But let's try going to a balance sheet and testing that. What's weird about the balance sheet is that it's always an as of, right? And when you put, your, you can't select periods here if you're looking at a consolidated view, just as a, so if I changed this to United States, now all of a sudden I can get the period or month view, and it's going to do forever, however many months you have out there. So do you see how it starts at 219? So this is going over multiple years, but I had to switch my subsidiary context. This would be a good analytics one, the Suite Analytics workbook question, because you could probably do it better over there than here, because this does have limitations. I do believe you can put a filter on this report to have a start date, but balance sheets by nature want to be forever. And so that's why you're going to get forever. But if we customize it, I think you could put a filter in it to say, I haven't tried this before, but I thought you could, to add a date and say after or between, and then say from, let's say 1/1/2022, and then look at it. I think then you'll get a smaller window. instead of the standard balance sheet. Yeah, you can. So hopefully that will help you. Does that make sense? Okay, let's see. Can you add a variance column? Yes. So when we were over here in the columns, you've got your 2 months, right? You've got the, I'm going to change this one. Actually, it was coming up 0 anyway, but you would, in this case, I like to change the label on, I don't know why it's doing that. I'm going to say like something like this year, and then in this amount, I'll say last year. And then if you add another column, you say add formula field. And then here you're able to tell it what variance you want. It's limited. You can add them, you can subtract them, and you can get percentage difference and ratios, basically, and multiply. But if I were to do a difference, then it says, okay, which is your X column? And then which is your Y column? And that's why I gave them a name. Otherwise, they would both have set amount. I don't think I saved that amount when I did it. And now it would add that variance column. And so there's limitations because those are the only options for your formula. I'm gonna try. Anyway, I'm running into weird test data, but you can get, and then of course I should have labeled that variance so that I left what it said with formula, but yeah, you can definitely do that. Okay, so freezing the header. Let's see. I think that can be done with that trick that Corey showed, right? Corey, or is that only on sublists where you can freeze the header? Do you mean you want to freeze? Well, it is freezing that part. Let me see, Suzanne, is that what you're asking about, freezing this part?
About freezing the column to the left. So when, like the report you showed a few minutes
Oh,
ago,
right.
had a whole
No.
bunch of columns
Off to the
and-
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. I think Corey does that, or Mike, you know, the that add-on, does it let you freeze the columns?
That's a Corey question.
Okay, we can come back to that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but you can't in native NetSuite.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. All right. And so a couple more things on that. We were looking at those filters. I wanted to show you just the one trick, because you can create reports. You don't have to create 100 reports to give out. You may be able to create 5 and then just have some filters available on the bottom of the report. So let's say you create a departmental budget to income statement report. You can have a filter on the bottom that's the department. Right now, there's already a department filter, but if you wanted to add a new filter, just make sure you check this box right here to show in the filter region, and then it'll show on the bottom of the report. So that can become part of the report, so that you can have one published report and everyone can just pick what they're interested in. The other thing I've seen is you can create reports and you can hard code the filters in, and then you can actually remove the filters from the filter region. And when you give them the options, you don't let them change the report. So then when you do that, they're stuck with exactly what you gave them, and they can't mess up the report if you take off all the filters. And so you could give them the report, but they can't actually change any of the filters, which is, I think, helpful, especially if you're dealing with users who don't use it every day. And so filters can be really powerful. In the more options, this is where you can give this to people. Also, this is super powerful right here, the drill down report. So I often have people ask me, I want to see the memo, the line memo and the header memo when I drill into a general ledger, so that I don't have to click into each one, or maybe they want to see the location or the class. So what you do is you create the drill down report that you want. So the income statement detail with everything that you want, all of those things, you give it a name that's meaningful. And so then when you come back to run an income statement, you create a custom income statement, name it something unique, and then point to that drill down report. And then put this custom income statement on your dashboard by doing the add to shortcuts. Then never use the report's financial income statement, because that's always going to go back to native NetSuite, the same drill down report, the same report. Instead, you can come in here and use your dashboard, click on the income statement, and then every time you drill into that report, you're going to see exactly what you want, instead of every time you drill in, customizing, adding the columns, saving it. So it's super powerful to create that drill down to show exactly what you want. Any questions on that? Because I maybe went through it fast, but it is super important. Okay, and then you can also obviously do cash basis, show zeros or not, activity only. I like the show zeros if you have a report that you're, thank you, Corey, the Chrome extension. The show zeros, if you have a report that you run that you drop somewhere else, and sometimes it doesn't have enough rows because you've got zero activity. If you show the zeros, then your report will look the same every time you run it. It'll just have zero rows with zeros. Here you can tell it who else can see this report. So you can assign it to either roles, people. It's pretty extensive. Keep in mind that this access actually overrides their permissions. So this is an example of when you might create a report that you take off the filters and you really scale down so that you can't drill in, and you do all kinds of stuff. You might do that because you're going to give them access to something that they normally wouldn't be able to see. But if you give them access on this page, you're overriding their permissions. If you give them access on this page, the audience page, their permissions still persist. So you won't be giving someone access to data that they don't already have permission for. So be super careful when you're using these two. When you're looking at a report, let's go back to the balance sheet. Keep in mind these tricks. I talked about one of them earlier. You can collapse, and then if you expand using this button, it's just going to go one layer at a time, which I think is really helpful. Now, if you were to export this to Excel right now, it would still have all of those detailed rows. I can't remember, I think it might hide them, but then you can unhide and see them all. But it doesn't keep it at this level. Sometimes I would prefer that I could export it just at this level. Or you can go in and just expand one of them at a time. It's super helpful. This tells you if you want the to display the title when you're print. So it'll come up here. It'll show the title. Obviously, the export to Excel, PDF, text, and Word, and you can email. This report doesn't look like I can schedule it. Sometimes you'll have a little clock down here, and you can schedule a report to run to you on or email to you on a series. I wonder if I just need to save it first. I'm going to go back into my income statement and see what happens. Okay. Yeah. Now I could do this custom income statement, and by using this little scheduler right here, I can tell it how often it should send this report to me and run it. So there you go. You got your recipients. You could have this sent to someone who's not in NetSuite who wants to get a report. You can schedule it to be sent to them on a regular basis. All right. The last thing is this hierarchy. And typically this is in the saved searches where you'll see the class. Let's say you're running a report and you want to pull the class in. You can pick with hierarchy or without hierarchy. It's similar to down here. Let's see. Nope, that's not. Yeah, we don't have hierarchies, but it keeps it flat, which can be helpful so that you don't have all those subtotals. So that's what the hierarchy and non-hierarchy, it'll make it just a flat file. So if you're doing some type of pivots, it's often easier to use the no hierarchy option, because then it won't, it'll be easy. It's more like a flat file without those subtotals. All right. Any questions on the reporting? I've got one more topic and it probably won't take the whole 15 minutes. So I'm happy to answer some questions on reporting. Okay. All right. The last one is about reminders. This is one of my favorite things in NetSuite. Going to the dashboard to show you. So it's powerful for doing things like keeping data integrity, also for workflows that are not specifically workflows. So for example, if you wanted to have a journal entry approval, but you didn't really want to use NetSuite's journal entry approval because you want it to hit the GL right away. You want it to post, then you just want to make sure someone saw it so that it got reviewed. Let's call it a review, not an approval, and you want it to post before that. So you could just add a checkbox onto the journal itself that was a review checkbox, and maybe you limited who had access to that box. You could do different things, but then on that person's dashboard, they could have a reminder, and it would be a safe search in the background that says, show me all the journals that haven't been reviewed, where that box isn't checked. Then they would click on it, look at all of them, check the box to say they're reviewed, come back here, refresh their reminder, and it wouldn't be there anymore. So and maybe it gets passed off to someone else at that point because there's another field that needs to be looked at or something like that. It's a way of moving tasks around, and it's super easy to set up. It doesn't take a scripter or anything. It doesn't even take a workflow in most cases, but you can use it with workflows. And so one way I use it a lot is for data integrity, because I have, if you don't have workflows that are stopping your users from doing things that they shouldn't do, and you just want to be aware of it, you can just set up some saved searches that look for the bad data, and then it comes out here. So here's an example. I wanted to know sales department charges that were booked to the OpEx section, because then they should probably go into the marketing department, not sales. And this is just a very not real world example, but I was looking at this data. So I saw that there were some charges. So I created a saved search that shows me, here are the charges that were charged to sales, but they hit an account that's an expense account, not a COGS account or income. So now, as the person who's in charge of fixing that, then if these weren't in closed periods, I could just edit each one of them and fix it. And then once I fixed it, so it was no longer in that state, it's going to drop off this list. So you want to have your saved searches be things that you can fix so that your list doesn't just continue to grow, but that you fix the problem and it drops off. And so this would take me in and I can now edit them. And then we've had cases where, well, we fixed that problem, but we did it a different way. And so let's say this one is always going to be here because we fixed it a different way. Well, you can then edit your search and change your date where it starts, or you can just change your filter so that that one is no longer on there, because dashboards become unusable if every time you look at it, you have to do math and say, oh yeah, there were those 5 transactions that aren't supposed to be there. So try to fix your saved search so that they drop off of the saved search. So in this case, I just said my account type is expense or other expense, my department is sales, and my posting is true. And then I put relevant results that I wanted. And then, but now I could go in and change my criteria if I wanted to change how much time this is looking, because I didn't want to include that one. So then once you have to check this available for reminders to make this a saved search, to make this saved search a reminder search. And then I made it public so that other people could put it on theirs. And so now when you're back at your dashboard, you can customize your dashboard and you say set up, and then you look for all of them. So here it was, I found it over here. I clicked on it to move it over here. One thing I like to do is show the reminders with 0 results. I check this box and I might say this one is really important, so I'm going to put it up here. I can drag it between them. And once I save, now it moved them. And look, I like knowing that, oh, I don't have anything to do in these 3 areas, but these I still need to deal with. You can change so that it'll give you, if you check this box, it'll be a headline, but you can also say add a rule that I want it to be yellow if it's greater than 0, and it'll change and put some color on there for you to help draw your eye to things that you need to take care of. If I have some clients, we might have 20 reminders out here. In that case, we usually hide the 0 ones so that you're only dealing with the ones that you need to deal with. And we also try to make all of them the type that go away, not reminders that just continue to grow, so that it's very rewarding for someone to come in and look at the reminder list and clear it and get down to 0. Let's see. You can put your tasks in here too, of course, using the tasks in NetSuite to say if they're overdue. We talked about reviewing data. Okay. Any questions on reminders? All right, let's just open it up to Q&A in general. And I can go back to any of the topics that we talked about or anything else. I'm happy to expand further on what we were looking at. Is everyone's brain full? I did have one question about those future dated, a save search for future dated transactions. I can do that one really quick if you want. So save search, I'll just do a new save search. And I think the trick to it, your question about 2 kinds of reminders, that was just headliner or not headliner. And it's, you decide which kind, where you want it to be. So when you edit this, if you say display as headline, it'll be larger and in the top. So it's just nothing about the search is just what matters to you, and what's more important you put on top in a larger font. So if you wanted to see transactions in the future, what I would do is a new transaction search. That's a good question. Sorry, now I'm bouncing back and forth, but can you make them go in the body of the email? And I think you can. I'll try that in a second. So here I would say posting, yes, because that's always my first thing. And then I'm just going to say mainline, yes, because I only want 1 line per transaction. I don't want to see all the detail. And then I'm going to say my date. And this is where I think you can do it right here. And you can say like next quarter, or I'm going to do quarter. I'm going to say take out the month, sorry. Because this will be rolling then, right? Next fiscal quarter. Or I thought there was one that was quarter after this one. I'm going to say next fiscal half. And so what that does is it looks out in the future. I'm trying to remember how we did it. We might have done it on days, 60 days from now. Yeah, that's only going to be one day, but you definitely want to make it a rolling. So there must be next rolling quarter. That's probably what we used. Next 4 weeks. Sorry about that. No, I'm not finding it.
Dana, it's also using a within versus a on or after that might.
Yeah, that's a much better. Yes. Thank you. That's the trick. So here you would want to say, I think there's a end of 3 months. Start of next fiscal quarter, previous rolling. I'm going to say next fiscal quarter. You have to play around. I'm sorry, I've lost what I set it up, but that then would be a rolling one, so it would keep moving forward. And then of course in the results, just put what you want, not all the garbage that they put in there. But I could look into that and see if I can find how I did it for my client. It might have just been after next month, because we wanted to know anything that was even out 1 month. And we get like one email a week because I scheduled it for Fridays, and then sometimes it's only 2 weeks out because we're toward the end of the month, but it's not very many transactions to review. So I'm going to go back to that scheduling question. So if I do that income statement, I thought there was a way to send it as an attachment down. If I schedule it, is it in the right here? Nope, down here. So did you try it with like MS Excel or PDF right here? Because I think then it would send it as an attachment versus inline HTML. I think that'll work. So that was for Ben. And then Tanya is asking about, oh, great, I see your answer. Does anyone know how to set up a vendor payment terms of 1/3 due on receipt, 2/3 due net 45? Let's just go to the terms setup. Lists accounting, where am I? Accounting lists, sorry, backwards. If we look at the terms, I think you can do that. Let's try. So you want 1/3. So I think days a month. You would have to do, yeah, I don't see that. Because you could call it 30% net 45, but that would just tell people, it wouldn't necessarily, so you would call it 30% and then net 45. And so you'd say, you'd have to put that no discount, right? But they would have to do the math on that 30%. Sorry, that doesn't really help you, does it? Tanya asked that question. Okay. Reporting customization, we utilize the customer field when entering a bill. Is there a way to pull the customer field into the income statement detail report? Only the vendor is showing up. Oh, yeah, I think it's entity. So that's what gets tricky on these safes, on these reports. If I go back to an income statement. And you're saying on the drill down, you want to see a customer. So let's just click here. And then you're customizing it. You're saying that name right there is not the right name that you want. And feel free to unmute if Tammy, if it helps. So if we go to our columns, I'll show you a little bit here. You can search for fields here. And I'm just going to say name, which is going to give me a ton. Well, I would think. So these are all the name fields. If you hover over them, look down here in the help area, you'll see what name it's referring to. And I know it's not going to be a custom names, and those are all the ones with the C. So I'm scrolling down. So this is the name entered on the name field on the account record. Okay, so that's on the account. So that's not it. That's account. This name is accounting period. This name. Yeah, a lot of these. So now I'm going to go back to add the fields. So it's on the bill. It's like the project, right, that you're assigning it to.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I think if we go down to the linked fields down here, it might be called project. It might be called job. So I have found that they don't change the name. You might have changed the word job to project, but sometimes when I'm searching for it, it's still called job. And this entity right here is probably what you're looking for, because this is the entity on the line, not on the header. So the vendor bills to the header, but then the entity on the line is probably the one that would be your project or customer.
Great. I'll give that a shot.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we should pause because we have tips and tricks, and then we can come back and do our open forum session where we can open it wide up, if that's all right. Is that all right, Corey?
Yep, that sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dana. Amazing presentation as usual. All right. We're going to go ahead and shift gears a little bit. So I'm going to do the tip and trick today. And the tip and trick I'm going to do is about Chrome extensions for NetSuite. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. So I'm going to show you how these extensions work or kind of what they do. But I'll just start off by highlighting the ones that I'm going to go through. So these are the one, and I'll post these on our website along with this meeting, so you can go back and get the name of these extensions if you want to install any of them into your Chrome. You can also just search for Chrome NetSuite extensions, like just a Google search, and it'll come up with a lot of different options. So most of these extensions are free. There's one that's a paid extension that I'm going to highlight as the last one. But the first ones here are all free. So NetSuite Advanced Field Help extends the NetSuite Field Help and adds relevant information to improve your productivity. NetSuite Field Explorer examines the fields in a NetSuite record. NetSuite Field Finder allows users to quickly find fields in a saved search and workflows, also provides additional details about fields in a dropdown. We have NetSuite Scripted Records. You can see the customizations deployed to that specific record type. We have NetSuite Show Field IDs. This allows you to just hover over the NetSuite fields to show their IDs. You can find fields by their ID or label. And then the last one, this is the one that's a paid extension. It's called Suite Advanced for NetSuite. And this one is pretty cool. I'm going to show you some of the things that it can do. So I'm going to switch over here and switch to a NetSuite view. Just a second, let me get configured here. Okay. So here's a demo account, and this was, I think it was a question from, actually, no, I'm gonna go back. Never mind. I'll come back to that question for Suzanne later. Okay, so the first one is NetSuite Advanced Field Help. So let's see. I have all these extensions. It doesn't really do anything up here when you click on it, but we can see that this extension is active. And so what it does is if we're looking at a transaction and I go into edit mode on that transaction, we'll go to edit this. What I can do is click on any of these, the names of the fields here, and you'll see that there's a bunch of different information that shows up here. So in this case, this is the sales rep field. It shows you a lot of cool information. It shows you what the values are. So this is a list type field. So these are all of the lists, the options that you could populate into that field. It gives you the current field value. You can enter a new value here. So if I wanted to set it to Joel Williams, let's see if we can demonstrate this. It'll let me do that from here, and it usually will do that. But the other thing that it does is it does follow NetSuite permissions. So if a user has this extension enabled and they don't have the ability to edit a field normally, they won't be able to edit it with this. And that didn't quite work. I don't know why. Maybe I'd have to use the internal ID. There we go. So that's the internal ID. You can see it change my sales rep field. So you can basically click on any of the fields and it gives you all this, a lot more information than you would normally get. If I turn this extension off, so that's a different one. Advanced field help. Let me turn this off. What we would normally get, I have to refresh my screen. Go back to the sales rep. This is what we normally get when we go to field help. It's just a description of whatever that field is. So that's a pretty cool one. Gives you a lot of some extra insight to different fields. Next one is called NetSuite Field Explorer. And I'm just going to go into a view mode on this sales order. So the NetSuite Field Explorer is this guy. And so what it does is when you click on it, it loads all of the information for the record that you're currently viewing. And so it basically gives you the ability to kind of search through fields. So let's say you're looking for a field that's buried in one of the menus. I'm just going to use sales rep because that's the one we just did, but I can type in sales rep or just sales, and we can see anything that has a value of sales in it or any field that has the name sales in it. So here's my sales rep. We can see it's set to 735, which is Will Clark's internal ID. So there's a lot of cool things that this one can do. I use this quite often, and just to kind of scroll through and see if I can find a field that I'm looking for, if it's buried in a sub tab or something like that. So that's a fun one. The next one is called NetSuite Field Finder. And this one is relatively new. And let me see if I think I have it enabled. Check NetSuite Field Finder. Yeah, okay. I'm going to turn it off first, actually. So what this one does is it it allows you to quickly find fields in a saved search and workflows. So in a saved search, I just have the beginnings of a basic transaction saved search here. When you're looking for a field, like in either the criteria, or if you're looking for a field in your results, you typically, it's alphabetical. You can type in the name of the field, so you can jump forward and find it, but it doesn't really give you any extra capability around that. So this extension, NetSuite Field Finder, we turn it back on. No, it doesn't show it's on. Oh yeah, it does. Okay. So I'm going to refresh this search. And now when I click on this drop down, we have this search functionality. So if I type in sales, it's kind of like that field finder or the field explorer, where I can see all of the values that have the word sales in it. So here's my sales rep fields. There's my sales rep field itself. You can filter the results here by standard fields, custom body fields, column fields, or the related records, which are always the ... fields at the bottom. So that's a pretty cool add-on. I use it from time to time. Sometimes I feel like it kind of gets in the way a little bit, but it's free. So, you can install it and start and test it out and see if you like it. But anyway, that one's called the NetSuite Field Finder. Next one is the NetSuite Scripted Records. So I'm going to go back to the sales order here, and I use this one quite often. This is, let's see, which one is it? I think it's this one here, NetSuite Scripted Records. So this is a extension that will basically search for all of the scripts or workflows that run on this record type. In this case, this is a sales order. And so we can scroll through this list and we can see all of the scripts that are available or that would potentially be running on a sales order. So these are all, see, there's a Celigo one, there's a drag and drop, tax transactions, a bunch of stuff that's pre-built by NetSuite. Here's some other ones. And then also we have workflows at the bottom. So we can see what workflows might be running on this sales order. And then we can see the status. So we can say, oh, what changed this field? Is it maybe one of these workflows? Well, no, because this workflow isn't initiating. So that's not it. But then you can also click on it from here and it would take you to the workflow if you had admin permissions to do that. You can also click on one of the scripts and it'll take you to that script. You can look at the deployments of it, that kind of stuff. So I find this one super helpful when we're trying to figure out what's running on this record, what might have caused the change, and you need to investigate the scripts or workflows that are running on it. Pretty darn handy. So that one is called NetSuite Scripted Records. The next one is real simple. It's called Show Field IDs. So if you noticed, when I hover over one of these fields, it just pops up and it says the internal ID of that field. So let me see if I can find a custom field. I think these are all just native fields, but these are the internal IDs of all of the fields. If you had a custom body field, it would say CUST body underscore and then the name of that field in this view here. Now you can also turn on to show internal IDs under your set preferences. So if I say show internal IDs right here, then that applies to all your record types. And when you go to edit, oh, actually, I'm sorry, that's not true. If you just click on the field help, what happened here? So if I click on it, then that shows the field ID here as well. So that's native NetSuite functionality, but you just have to turn that on in your set preferences. Okay, so the last one, so those are all the free ones. The last one is called Suite Advanced for NetSuite. The developer who created this extension he's a part of our user group, and he's I don't think he's here today, but he's attended before. I met him at Sweet World one year. Really smart guy, and I just think it's such a cool tool to use. This isn't an ad for him or the software. It's just I use this software or this extension personally, and it's so invaluable. It's become a part of everyday NetSuite for me. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the different things that it can do. So first of all, when I have the extension enabled, I get this little icon up here for Suite Advanced. And so what I can do is I can turn it on and off as I want. So if it's kind of messing with things and I don't want to, I want to turn it off for a while, or if I'm doing a demo for a client or something, I might turn it off so that the NetSuite doesn't look funny to them. So you'll notice when I turn this on, I'm going to enable it for this account. So what it does is you'll notice right away it changes things a little bit. So the menus are a lot more compact. There's a lot less white space. There's these little icons that indicate that there's an extra menu if you hover over it. So just the user interface is changed a little bit, and it just kind of makes things a little bit more compact. So one of the things that we can do is I work in multiple NetSuite accounts every day, and even if you're an end user and you don't have multiple NetSuite accounts, but maybe you have a sandbox account and you want to customize the color theme of your account, what you can do is we can click on the extension up here, and we can choose the colors of what we want. So if I choose the main color of like dark gray, and then I can choose the secondary color of maybe orange, then you can see how those are going to change on the screen. And this will apply to this account anytime you're using it. If I change the main color, like it goes back. So I like this because it gives you a lot more flexibility of your color theme in NetSuite. And this in itself doesn't really necessarily increase productivity or anything like that, but especially if you're in different accounts, it's super helpful. Or if you just want to be able to have your own color scheme. So the next thing is that there's a dark mode. So I know a lot of people like dark mode, so you're not looking at a big white screen all day long. I don't personally like this view using NetSuite because I think I'm just so used to the classic view. But dark mode, and I just have to refresh my screen here. So dark mode is kind of a neat feature if you're into the dark mode thing. I'm going to go ahead and turn that back off here. Let's go back to light. And then there's an auto, which would probably, I think, follow your system settings. So the next one is this field ID exposure. So if I'm on a sales order or any record for that matter, I can hit Control-I on my keyboard, and it automatically exposes all of the internal IDs of those fields. So here's a couple of custom fields. So you can see those are the ones that are installed by a bundle or something like that. So that's a pretty neat feature if you just want to be able to kind of scroll through those, find those IDs really quick. And then you could maybe do a Control-F and you can say, okay, I want to find all my custom body fields. Where are those on this page? So then you just hit Control-I to turn that back off again. Another cool feature is this record export. This is a new one, a new feature. So you go on this sales order, I can say export fields, and it's going to generate this CSV file, and it'll just kind of download it here, and I'll open it up as soon as it downloads here. But basically, if you are looking for a field, or if you want to investigate the fields that are available to this record, this is a quick way to get a list of everything. So there's my CSV. Hang on one second, I'll bring this over. So this is the CSV that was exported. So the record type is sales order. Here's your field IDs, the field label, the type of field, and then the options, and then there's the help text. So this is really, this is like an administrator power user capability. Not everyday users are going to need this type of capability, but it's super cool. It just exported all of the fields and what they're, everything that's on this sales order record. So that's a new feature for Suite Advanced. Let me show this one. So this is to answer, I think it was Suzanne's question earlier, can you freeze like the first column? So normally when you scroll over, this column doesn't freeze, and I'm gonna have to zoom in here to kind of simulate having to scroll over. So Suite Advanced, oh, I have to enable it. I had it turned off on this page earlier, so that's why it said that, because I was testing it. So I'm gonna do by accounting period, my income statement. I'm going to zoom in to simulate. Oh, I got to scroll over. So watch this first column. This first column stays in place as you're scrolling across, so that you can say, oh, there's my project expenses. You can look at them all the way across the board, instead of if I disable it, I can disable it just on a tab or a page. So if I go back to that accounting period, I zoom in and I scroll over, then I lose what, the name of the row that I'm looking at. So that's a pretty cool little feature. There are there's like 100+ features as part of this app. So some of those are the main ones that I wanted to show. Oh, I'm going to show one more before I break on this. So there's this why is it okay? It's on. Oh, okay. So I need to save this first. So I'm just going to say, do a quick search here. Shoot, sorry. Type. And then this is another thing, is that you get this big long scrolling list. This is part of Suite Advanced. I'll just save and run this. I'm going to go back in to edit, and you can see this split view button now. So this split view is a function of the Suite Advanced. So if I click on split view, what it does is it gives me the ability to edit my search up here, and then I can preview the results without having to either click save and run or preview or anything like that. So I can add my criteria, change things around. Let's say date is within, we'll say today, and then I can hit preview, and there's probably not going to be anything. There's probably no transactions for today. Yeah, so you can see what the immediate results of your changes are going to be with that split view. You can exit the split view there. So like I said, there's a ton. Yeah.
Oh, there's a couple questions for you. The price, and
Okay.
also, can you buy one subscription to cover different NetSuite accounts?
Okay, so the last that I knew, the price is $100 a year per user. When you have a license, you can use it on any NetSuite account that you have access to. But don't take my word for it on that price, because I don't know if that's the current price. But that's what it was last time I checked.
And Roy just posted a link to it so people can go look at the web store. So that helps.
Yeah. So I mean, this is $8 a month current price. That comes out to $100, $99 a year, I think. I mean, this is for power users, people that are in NetSuite all day long, administrators, that kind of thing. I think it's a really small price to pay. Where NetSuite ends and where Suite Advanced begins is blurry for me at this point, because I use it every day in every account that I'm in. And there's nothing you have to install into that NetSuite account or any changes to that NetSuite account. It's all done through the browser. So there's no security risks or anything like that. So
Corey, does split view also work when editing forms? Bernie asked.
Does the split view when editing forms? No, it does not. That's a great question. The split view is only on save searches. Yeah. Is there any others? Oh, there's another. Roy posted NetSuite fixed sublist headers. That's a good extension too. Okay, so any other questions on that or on any of the others? So those are the ones that I use day in and day out, and thought that might be helpful for everybody to know. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and then we will move into our open forum section here. And if there's any questions, I'm going to let Mike take over, if that's okay, Mike.
Yep.
And we'll, as a group, try and help each other out.
So yeah, this is a good chance if you have any burning questions of stuff you're stuck on at work or something. It's a good chance to ask the community here, and hopefully someone can help.